어마어마하고 최근에 근데 이재 씨가 뭐 그 인터뷰를 했는데 아직 정산이 되진 않았지만 정산을 받으면은 뭐 400억 이상 받지 않겠는가. 근데 거기에다가 뭐 부가적인 가치는 말할 것도 없겠죠. 그리고 실제로 이게 물론 뭐 소니 픽처스가 제작을 했다, 뭐 넷플릭스가 했다 그러니까 그러면 이건 한국 작품이 아닌 거 아니냐, 막 이런 논쟁이 있었는데. 저는 사실은 이런 얘기를 외국 애들한테 하면 왜 너희들은 그런 바보 같은 논쟁을 하고 있냐 이렇게 얘기해요. 왜냐면 우리가 즐기는 거는 한국 문화인데 왜 거기서 국적 타령을 하고 있냐는 얘기죠. 그리고 지금 이거를 어떻게 보면 그동안은 그러니까 우리는 우리끼리 있을 때 한국 사람을 우리가 한국인이 차별하진 않잖아요. 하지만 어찌 보면 이걸 만든 캐나다계 한국계 캐나다인인 매기관 감독님이라든지 이걸 부른 사람들은 전부 코리안 아메리칸들이란 말이죠. 이들은 항상 그 경계인으로서 그리고 항상 완벽한 주류가 되지 못하고 그렇다고 완벽한 한국인도 되지 못하는 그런 어떤 좀 이중적인 정체성을 갖고 있는 이들이 이제 K-팝 시대를 만나서 이들이 주체가 된 거예요. 그렇죠. 이것도 굉장히 좀 통쾌한 순간입니다, 사실은.
그래서 보면서 느낀 게 이걸 외국인들이 이해할 수 있을까? 했는데 이렇게 잘 이해하고 있을 줄이야. 그러니까 가장 한국적인 게 가장 세계적인 거. 그리고 트렌디한 게 되어 있더라고요. 그러니까 여러분은 그 캐디언에서 가장 인상 깊었던 장면 하나 꼽는다면 뭐인가요?
그 중에 제일 신기했던 게 1월 오봉도라고 아세요? 제가 이거 갖고 왔는데
문화예술이 우리 사회를 인류세 또는 포스트 휴머니즘 사회에서 우리 사회를 구원할 거야.
우리는 북한에 그들이 공식적으로 내세우는 자료를 통해서만 판단하니까 그거를 북한 인민의 취향이라고 생각할 수가 있어요. 그렇지 않다는 거죠.
This has been Peace Insight. Thank you for watching.
How to survive in Korea. Weddings. Step 0. Attire. As a guest, dress formal to business casual. Avoid wearing all white, shorts or going topless. Step 1. Arrival time. Arrive 30 minutes prior to the wedding ceremony. Too many cars, too many halls, too many people. There are many twists and turns. Take pictures and shake hands. And write your name vertically, not horizontally in the guest book. Step 2. Or, shibor. 50,000 won, 100,000 won, 150,000 won. Cash gifts are given in these units. Decide on the amount based on your relationship. Write your name vertically on the envelope. Step 3. Wedding etiquette. Fill up the front row. Guests have 3 duties to fulfill: clapping, cheering, and taking pictures. Step 4. Dining. Take off your jacket. This will be your seat from now on. Start with the not your everyday delicacies. Kalbijim. Yes. Bosa. Yes. Chili shrimps. Definitely yes. Kimbap. Yeah. Only if you can't live without it. No need to pile up food. You have more than one opportunity. Did you survive the wedding? Wait. Did someone catch your eye? What are you waiting for? You're looking fine today.
The moment we wear it, our spirits lift. It helps us grow strong in body and in mind. As we wear it, we learn patience and respect. The belt system motivates students to strive harder and continue growing. This uniform shapes movement into grace and turns performance into something thrilling. Now, embraced around the world, Taekwondo shares our culture, philosophy, and values with pride and spirit. Though it may seem simple, this uniform holds your passion and your journey. It belongs to Taekwondo. Wear the extraordinary. Be with Taekwondo.
President Lee Jae-myung met with the Japanese internet giant SoftBank Group founder Masayoshi Son in Seoul on Friday and discussed the partnerships in advanced technologies, namely artificial intelligence. South Korea and the U.S. have officially launched a visa support desk at the U.S. Embassy here in Seoul to help Korean firms investing in the U.S. with smoother entry procedures, as a follow-up measure of the mass detention of Korean workers in Georgia this past September. South Korea's current account surplus in October sharply narrowed from a month earlier, but that's because of fewer working days during the Chuseok holiday and the absence of large one-off exports of ships. We begin at the presidential office in Yongsan, where President Lee Jae-myung sat down with SoftBank Group founder Masayoshi Son to explore avenues of partnership in the field of artificial intelligence. Our correspondent Song Yu-jin starts us off.
South Korean President Lee Jae-myung is broadening his AI diplomacy, this time by meeting with Masayoshi Son, the head of Japanese tech investment giant SoftBank. The two met at the Yongsan presidential office on Friday to discuss the latest trends in artificial intelligence and potential avenues for cooperation.
저는 인공지능이 가지는 엄청난 역량 때문에 마치 상수도나 하수도 무슨 도로처럼 모든 국민들, 모든 국가들이 함께 누리는 정말 초보적인 인프라로 활용할 수 있다고 믿고.
The SoftBank CEO highlighted what he calls the next technological frontier, ASI, or artificial superintelligence, which he described as AI that is 10,000 times smarter than humans.
Instead of we think we can control them, we can teach them, we can manage them, we have to start to harmonize. We have to start to synchronize. We have to start to respect.
During their more than hour-long meeting, Son suggested 4 pillars that he believes will help South Korea prepare for the rise of artificial superintelligence: energy, semiconductors, data, and education. In line with this proposal, South Korea's industry ministry and ARM, the British semiconductor design company in which SoftBank is the largest shareholder, signed an MOU to form a working group for the so-called ARM School.
ARM School will be a chip design-focused institution built on ARM's strengths. It aims to train about 1,400 top-tier experts, becoming a valuable asset in strengthening South Korea's semiconductor ecosystem, particularly in areas like fabless design, where the country remains relatively weak.
The industry ministry is preparing to name an institution for this new semiconductor graduate program, with the Gwangju Institute of Science and Technology being considered the leading candidate. This marks President Lee's latest meeting with global AI leaders following talks with the heads of BlackRock, OpenAI, and NVIDIA. These discussions reflect the Lee administration's resolve to make South Korea one of the world's top 3 AI powerhouses by strengthening technological competitiveness and global cooperation networks. 송유진, Arirang News.
And after meeting with the SoftBank CEO, President Lee traveled to the city of Cheonan on Friday to hold a town hall meeting with the residents of Chungcheongnam-do province. In his opening remarks, President Lee reiterated that developing regions outside the capital is the only way to ensure South Korea's economic survival. Among the ideas suggested was transforming the province into a hub for high-tech industries, particularly displays, semiconductors, and mobility. Now, to support this, the government plans to establish a next-generation display research institute by 2030, as well as a semiconductor support center to help chip companies strengthen their technological capabilities. After the shocking detention of more than 300 Korean workers following an immigration raid over in Georgia, South Korea and the U.S. have been holding meetings to improve the U.S. work visa system. Now, some of the measures to make the entry system smoother were unveiled today. Our Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
To keep up the momentum for the cooperation between Seoul and Washington, the two countries formed a visa working group to address challenges faced by workers at Korean businesses entering the U.S. And significant progress has been made after two meetings held in late September and October. According to the Foreign Ministry on Friday, 6 major improvements were made. The U.S. Embassy released a visa fact sheet clarifying the scope of eligible activities for B1 and ESTA visa holders in both Korean and English, an unprecedented move for the U.S. to publicly release such material. A Korea investment team desk, the so-called KIT desk, has been established at the U.S. Embassy in Seoul. Led by the embassy's economic section and supported by interagency partners, the embassy says it will work with Korea's top investors in the U.S. to address business travel challenges. It is known to have already started giving guidance since October, though it opened officially on Friday. Washington has also streamlined the visa process for all business travelers supporting Korean projects in the U.S. This is a major step for subcontracted staff. Until now, major companies such as Samsung, Hyundai Motors, and LG usually received stable visas like E2 or L visas that rarely cause problems. Subcontracted workers were the ones who often struggled to prepare their own applications and faced more denials, but these difficulties are now expected to ease significantly. In particular, when issuing a B1 visa, the applicant will be able to use the annotation section to specify details such as which company, which facility, and which project they will be working on. This is known to be a special measure applied only to Korea and is expected to help verify travelers' status in case of any unexpected immigration enforcement checks. The Korean government also plans to form cooperation channels between Korean missions and immigration authorities in cities where many Korean company employees enter the U.S., such as Los Angeles. Lastly, the U.S. has guaranteed that employees who were previously detained in Georgia will not face any disadvantages when re-entering the country. Those who already hold a B1 visa can continue using it, and workers who have been entering under the ESTA visa will be able to receive a B1 immediately. While saying this year's Korea-U.S. Visa Working Group meetings were successful, Second Vice Foreign Minister Kim Jin-ah said they will continue to be held next year to further improve the entry process for staff of Korean companies to enter the U.S. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
South Korea's current account sees a smaller unmanned surplus in October. But analysts point out the cumulative current account surplus for the first 10 months of this year has hit a fresh high. Park Jun-han reports.
South Korea's 30-month-long current account surplus continued in October. The current account shows the balance of imports and exports as well as other money flows into and out of the country. The Bank of Korea announced on Friday that the preliminary current account surplus registered for October stood at $6.81 billion. This is about 50% lower than September's $13.47 billion. However, the central bank stated that the difference was largely due to fewer working days during the extended Chuseok holiday and the absence of large one-off exports of ships.
South Korea posted a $6.81 billion current account surplus in October, but the surplus narrowed sharply from the previous month, mainly due to temporary factors such as fewer business days during the Chuseok holiday, which reduced the goods balance.
Meanwhile, the cumulative current account surplus from January to October this year hit a record high. The total current account surplus during the period reached $89.58 billion. This is 17% higher than the same period last year when it stood at $76.63 billion.
Although October's current account surplus declined from the previous month due to several temporary factors, the holiday variable disappears in November, and with South Korea recording all-time high semiconductor exports and generating a significant trade surplus, the current account surplus is expected to recover to the strong level of more than $10 billion.
According to projections by the Korea International Trade Association, South Korea is expected to surpass $700 billion in exports for the first time in 2025. The association claimed that the country will deliver even stronger results in 2026, projecting that semiconductors and ships will drive the momentum for robust export growth. 박준환, Arirang News.
Here in Seoul, the heavy snowfall, which started during yesterday's rush hour, continued to cause inconvenience for commuters on Friday morning. Our An Sang-jin tells us more.
Pedestrians carefully shuffle down the street, some gripping onto handrails as the steps were slippery. Following the first snow of the season on Thursday evening, major inconveniences continued for commuters due to heavy snowfall and icy road conditions on Friday.
A trip that should take 10 to 20 minutes took me over 30 minutes today. It's really hard to catch a taxi, and the buses seem to be running a bit later than usual. I almost slipped when I left home, so I have to be careful.
It's slippery, so I need to be careful. A fall could be fatal for an elderly person.
Snow began falling around rush hour on Thursday, coming down at nearly 5 centimeters per hour. Heavy snow disaster alerts were sent out to 21 regions, including Eunpyeonggu District in Seoul and Gapyeonggong County and Pocheon City in Gyeonggi-do Province. The snowfall led to the shutdown of more than 30 sections of urban expressways, including Gangbyeongbukro and Dongbu Arterial Road, as well as 9 city roads, leaving commuters stranded. As of Friday afternoon, all road closures in Seoul due to icy conditions have been lifted. The Seoul Metropolitan Government issued a Level 1 snowfall response on Thursday afternoon and deployed over 5,000 personnel and more than 1,100 snow removal vehicles in preparation ahead of the sudden heavy snow. However, this didn't prevent traffic chaos during the evening commute. Officials explained that although initial response efforts were made, the intense snowfall over a short period overwhelmed the system, making it difficult for pre-spread de-icing agents to work properly. Experts say that the heavy snowfall came from a strong Siberian high-pressure system expanding southward. The warm air from a high-pressure system in the south met the cold air descending from the north, creating a stationary pressure that increased atmospheric instability. Officials warned that as the snow from Thursday had frozen over, many roads are expected to remain icy. They also cautioned about thin layers of black ice that have formed in many areas. An Sang-jin, Arirang News.
Crisis and management efforts continue at Coupang as its online foot traffic declines, while relevant authorities pledge tougher accountability. Our business correspondent Kim Do-yeon has the latest.
The massive data breach involving 33.7 million Coupang accounts is now directly impacting the e-commerce giant's user base. According to data released by Mobile Index on Friday, Coupang's daily active users dropped to 17.8 million on December 2nd. This represents a decrease of more than 180,000 users compared to the record high observed just one day prior. Market analysts attribute this fluctuation directly to the breach, with traffic shifting from a spike in initial concern to a trend of user departure. Despite growing anxiety among consumers, law enforcement authorities stated on Friday that no actual crimes linked to the leaked data have been confirmed so far. The National Office of Investigation reported that after analyzing over 22,000 reports of voice phishing and smishing, as well as 116,000 cases of physical crimes, including stalking and break-ins, no secondary damage correlated to the Coupang breach was found. Police emphasize they will continue monitoring for any misuse of delivery addresses or order histories. Meanwhile, consumers attempting to leave the platform are facing friction. Deleting a Coupang account currently requires a complex process involving multiple verification steps. In response, the Broadcasting Media Communications Commission has launched a fact-finding investigation to determine if this procedure violates the Telecommunications Business Act by effectively restricting a user's right to terminate their service. Simultaneously, government regulators are moving to tighten legal repercussions. The Personal Information Protection Commission has announced a policy of strict enforcement regarding the incident. Legislators are pushing to raise the fine cap under the Personal Information Protection Act from the current 3% to 4% of total revenue and to enforce substantive punitive damages for data handlers who exhibit gross negligence. This regulatory shift has created tension across the corporate sector, with major firms such as GS Retail, Yes24, and KT also under investigation for separate security incidents facing the prospect of significantly heavier sanctions. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Russia's Vladimir Putin maintained his intentions to seize Ukraine's Donbas region, quote, by military or other means, even as efforts to end his aggression against Kyiv continue. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent Oh Seong reports.
Russian leader Vladimir Putin has warned that Moscow will seize Ukraine's eastern region of Donbas if Ukrainian troops do not withdraw from the area. This came in an interview with India Today, before the Russian leader left for a trip to New Delhi. He told the Indian Daily that he intends to liberate Donbas and Novorossiya at any cost, by military or other means, according to Russian state media TASS. Amid the United States' efforts to end the near 4 years of war, the Kremlin has been demanding Ukraine hand over territory in the Donbas region, 85% of which is currently under Russian control. This comes after US President Donald Trump claimed his negotiators believe the Russian leader would like to end the war after talks over a peace plan in Moscow on Tuesday. Last week, the Trump administration's 28-point draft proposal was leaked and criticized for largely reflecting the Kremlin's main demands, including Ukraine giving up territory, limiting its military, and dropping its efforts to join NATO. The proposal has reportedly been revised since then, with input from Kyiv and European nations, but the details have not been disclosed. Putin said his 5-hour talks with US envoys at the Kremlin on Tuesday were necessary and useful, but also difficult work. While deeming some proposals unacceptable, Putin said he believed the US leader is sincere.
We had a feeling, and even more than a feeling. I had no doubt that President Trump has sincere desire. Well, let's not talk about what's the cause of it, but what dictated this sincere desire, but it is there, in place for sure. The United States and President Trump, indeed, they have their own understanding of why it needs to end, and as soon as possible.
Putin has previously said he is generally on board with Trump's proposals as a basis for future agreements, while threatening continued military advancement should Ukraine refuse to comply. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has refused to cede territory and has called for a security guarantee from the West. Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff is due to meet Ukraine's team in Florida after returning from Moscow. According to German news outlet Der Spiegel, European leaders are skeptical of Trump's peace deal efforts. On Thursday, the publication reported that in a call between Zelensky and other European leaders, French President Emmanuel Macron warned that the United States could betray Kyiv on territorial concessions without clarity on security guarantees. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz reportedly told Zelensky that US negotiators are, quote, playing games and that he should be very careful for the next few days. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
The Korea Customs Service said Friday it has seized a record high of nearly 3,000 kilograms of illegal drugs at the border this year so far. The service said it will launch joint operations with the 10 countries to bolster its crackdown. Meanwhile, the Korean National Police Agency said Friday that it had arrested 28 people who were committing scam crimes in Cambodia and Thailand. Based on key intelligence provided by the Chungnam Provincial Police Agency, a mobile investigation unit. The Cambodia-Korea task force drew up an operational plan breaking change with local law enforcement officers. The KMPA said this was the first outcome of a global joint operation led by Korean police, including 16 countries and 3 international organizations. There are many reasons to wait for Fridays, and one of them is definitely the arts and culture coverage by our culture correspondent, Park Konu. He is here in the studio with us tonight. Welcome back, Konu.
Great to be here, Dami.
So what do you have for us tonight?
Right, so this week, the global sports community turned its attention to the southern port city, Busan, in South Korea, where the World Conference on Doping in Sport was wrapped up with its 5 program on Friday. And it was a historic moment as it was the first time any Asian city hosted the event, held every 6 years. And on closing day, delegates adopted the Busan Declaration, reaffirming a shared commitment to protecting the values of clean and fair competition, strengthening international cooperation, and safeguarding the rights of athletes, and also ensuring the independence of national anti-doping organizations. The revised regulations and related international standards will be applied from 2027 for 6 years, this time mainly focusing on protecting the rights of athletes who are minors and anti-doping organization independence. Korea also introduced a proposal to expand the use of digital tools in anti-doping education. South Korean volleyball legend Kim Hyun-kyung spoke at the event, emphasizing how actively Korea has been developing and implementing these innovative approaches.
Korea has been working on interactive training instead of passive lectures, a mobile online platform for anytime learning, and a mentoring program with athlete committee members, including myself, to share real on-field experience. For us, education is a key tool to protect athletes and strengthen fair play, an effort the global sports community must pursue together.
Konu, weren't there also programs to educate minors, right? Tell us more.
Right, so the 2025 edition of the event had these exchange programs with well-known athletes who are working as athlete committee members of anti-doping agencies, including Kim Hyun-kyung herself, legendary archer Ki Bo-bae, and bobsleigh star Won Yun-jong, as well as international athletes such as Irish para-rower Patrick O'Leary, whom I also met at the event. They spent time learning which substances are considered doping and which are not, and many athletes told me how important it is to understand these rules from an early stage.
Learning about clean sport and anti-doping properly from a young age can be crucial for an athlete's future. Through education, athletes gain a clear understanding of clean sport. Athletes can protect themselves and also protect their fellow competitors. That's why this education is so important.
It's really important to come together and to revisit the rules and make sure that the rules are keeping up with any developments there are in new drugs or new techniques that need to be monitored. And if you can concentrate the education with the students who are definitely going to be involved in the long term, they'll act as a seed for the good information for the rest of Korea's athletes.
And one junior athlete who participated in the program said he wants even more.
I was able to learn about many different substances, including which ones are prohibited and not. In the future, if I'm prescribed medication at a hospital, I now know I can check it.
So building on its growing popularity among these students, the KADA announced it will work with WADA in Busan City to establish and expand this kind of program to an Asian youth athletes camp as a lasting legacy of the Busan WADA conference.
Well, Kanu, this is such a huge event. Now, a lot of renowned figures travel to Busan, proving the significance of this event. Who are some of the key figures other than those legends, Kim Young-kyung and Won Yun-jong?
Right. So this event, as you know, was participated by around 2,000 people, including delegates from around 160 countries, the World Anti-Doping Agency president, and also the IOC president.
The most ideal is to have no doping, right? We can only do that together if we're working together as one to ensure that each of us plays our roles. And Korea has been a really good partner for the Olympic movement, and most recently in the past few years with hosting the Winter Games. And I'm sure they will continue to be a really solid partner for us and help unify the one team.
You have invested quite heavily in matters of anti-doping. You have spoken out boldly. The genetic make of our athletes may be different, but it is important we share information and see how best we can collaborate so that at the world level, we will not be cheated. We have to meet and have a conversation. So the long journey was worth it.
This comes as Korea continues its long-standing contribution to WADA, having been elected to the executive committee for the 5th time and now serving through 2028. Korea has also been supporting developing countries with training and education programs.
Right. Now, Kanu, before I let you go, the enhanced games issue was also another major hot topic throughout the entire conference, right?
Definitely a hot topic. First of all, the enhanced games will be held at Nevada, USA this coming May. And the event is essentially a sports competition that allows the use of doping substances. And naturally, it became a hot topic at the conference, definitely. And WADA officials made it clear that such events not only violate the fundamental ethics of sport, but are also dangerous acts that put athletes' lives at risk, even though the event does not fall directly under WADA's jurisdiction.
Indeed, Konu, thank you for covering that report. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
More than 5 centimeters of snow fell around the central regions yesterday. It was quite a lot for the first snow of this winter. The snow has stopped, but freezing conditions mean roads and sidewalks are slippery. Please pay attention to avoid accidents. This morning began with severe cold, with the temperature in Seoul plunged to -7 degrees Celsius. It only rose to 2 degrees during the day. Temperatures will start to rise from tomorrow afternoon and will be relatively mild on Sunday. The temperature in Seoul will be as high as 12 degrees on Sunday. Most areas will start off below zero, with Seoul at -1, Chuncheon at -7 degrees. Highs will rise to the double digits in Daejeon, Daegu, and Gyeongju at 10 degrees, Jeju at 17 degrees. Rain is forecast in the central and western parts of the country on Saturday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.
Knock! The magical door to the world of K-animation is swinging wide open. Meet your instant new BFF, the adorable Catch. Tina Ping will have you hooked from the very first glance. Need a hand? Our Robocar Pony Rescue team is always zooming in to save the day. How about tagging along on Ping Fong and Pal's super exciting quest to reclaim their lost magic? With the mysterious life forms Cabion by your side, you can become a Cabion master and save humanity like the total hero. Protecting children's innocence while igniting their boundless imaginations. That's the magic of Korean animation. K-animation, the ultimate bestie for kids worldwide.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gyan. South Korea is reeling after a massive personal data breach at e-commerce giant Coupang, an incident that exposed information from tens of millions of users and immediately reignited national concern over digital security. And as details emerge, the spotlight has widened to past breaches at SK Telecom, KT Telecom, and Lotte Card, raising a deeper question: how does a country known as an ICT powerhouse continue to suffer failures that span both internal controls and external defenses? So what concrete fixes in law, security, and company oversight are urgently needed to stop this from happening again? For answers to this, we are joined today in the studio by Bum-Soo Kim, professor at the Graduate School of Information at Yonsei University and executive director at Paden ICT Research Center. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me here.
And also joining me to my left is our go-to attorney, An Jun-sung. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So let's start with Professor Kim. Like I've said, recently we've seen consecutive personal data leakage cases from major companies in the country. So why is South Korea so vulnerable, even as an ICT leader? And do you think this problem is only prevalent in the country?
Well, this year Korea is highly exposed, not because it lacks the security capabilities, but because hackers are more vigilant and Korea is more connected than other countries. And this phenomenon is not just unique Korean phenomena. The major countries' economies like US, Europe also experience similar phenomena at the same time. One additional feature that creates bigger incidents in Korea is that Korea is dominated by big, large conglomerate businesses in the economy, which lead to small breaches, lead to the bigger incidents.
Right, so these kinds of backgrounds actually expose Korea to these kinds of vulnerabilities. But at the same time, there are concerns, Attorney An, about the fact that these companies, large conglomerates, collect and also keep far more personal information than what's actually necessary. And this is going to make the breaches worse, of course. What's your view on that?
Okay, in terms of collection and retention of personal data by the company, I think the main issue is the consent requirement. So what I mean that the question is that what kind of the consent requirement do Korean companies have right now? And the question is that saying what happens, generally speaking, there are two types of consent requirements, legally speaking, right? There's opt-in or opt-out. So opt-in means that you have option to reject before you get the service, and opt-out means that you have option to reject after you get the service. In Korea, currently, the opt-in system applied in terms of privacy protection. However, the problem in Korea right now is that by the law, what happened was that the many Korean companies, like what Professor Kim said, the big companies, major conglomerate, they abuse take advantage of the legal loophole of the opt-in system. Means that they require the users to provide excessive personal information before they get the service. So basically means that you take or leave it, because they will the dominant service player in the field. If you want to get the best service in Korea, either you sign up with us, with our condition, or you go with someone else. I think that's a really big problem here. And then if we compare with the European case, Europe have a GDPR, and GDPR have, in terms of a privacy consent requirement, they use a minimization requirement, which is something a little bit stronger, actually, than opt-in system. Traditionally, EU is kind of getting toward to opt-in, and US was opt-out system. But EU and developed further, and there was a minimization, means that the company had a bear burden, have to prove that, and they have to prove the regulators that they are collecting minimum amount of information and retaining minimum amount of information. So that's the really big difference between Korea and EU. I think that's the thing, one of the things we might want to consider when we revise, the current regulation.
Right, a very important fact. So the amount of the information that the companies are holding, it could really amplify the damages. So changing to a lesser necessity of these information would be also helpful. Now, what's really striking now is that these companies actually hit by these breaches this year are actually, they receive this ISMSP certification under the National Security and Privacy System. Professor, what are your thoughts on this calls for this certification to actually be revisited?
Well, we need to be clear that ISMSP, the Personal Information Security Management Certification System, which is a kind of shield showing that the companies follow certain steps to protect personal information. But that doesn't guarantee that there will be no privacy breach incidents. It requires a certain level of systems to protect personal data in the businesses, and it shows that a proper level of protection in the company is being provided to protect the consumers. But nowadays, the hackers have better tools. They are using agentic AI, multimodal AI, and inside the attack, the former employer's attack, the levels of security attacks have heightened such a level so that we need to revisit some features of this certification system so that we have to follow up and provide better tools and measures to improve and provide better shield for the businesses and guidelines for the shield.
Right, definitely. That would be really necessary, following up with the level of security threats that we've mentioned. Now, what's quite unique about Coupang's case lately, that it actually involved an insider who's known to have worked there and to be a Chinese official, I believe, a Chinese national, I believe. What does that actually tell us about how companies manage their security staff and also internal controls, Attorney An?
Well, there's, I think that it caused by a combination of many factors. So maybe I should focus on a legal perspective rather than, factual issues. And I think the insider things happen very often, actually. It's not really disclosed outside, but it's very often. So I guess this one's so big instance, so it's like everybody talk about it. So now it's a big issue. But I think that all companies having similar issue, controlling inside control and compliance issue. So, but however, legal question, one of the questions the public talking about is it our legal library is too weak? Or is just stronger enough to prevent the CEO or the directors or board of directors to have enough concern about what really happen if something comes out, right? And the question is that is the Korea have a weak legal liability in terms of the breach, data breach? The answer is yes and no. If you ask it, is it weak compared to US? Well, it's stronger. But if you compare it to EU, it's weaker. So it's a relative term. So once again, Korea is kind of in the halfway because I think we have different situation from US and EU, right? US, traditionally, they have a very ICT, global companies headquarters, right? Like Google, Amazon, everything there, right? Actually, almost big major companies there, but Korea, we don't have really major global players, right? And the EU, in other way, EU side is more like they geared toward and protection, because the most major players are from U.S., U.S.-based company. So I guess that's what happened here. So in U.S. we call like more deregulation. They kind of focus on deregulation, and the U.S. is more EU side is more like a consumer protection side, right? So in Korea we need to get a balanced approach, because the problem is it's very difficult to balance on different interests, because that if we got too much on the one side and the other group will complaining, like if we do too much regulation, the company will complain, and too less regulation, and then the public complain. But the question is that who say which one is proper? So I think there's things that balancing very difficult to get it. Not only socially and legally, it's very difficult to do it. But my concern is that I found some new fact about the actual Korean law system, because in case of a data breach under the GDPR Article 33, what happened was that you have two conditions combined. So one is that without undue delay, you have the controller have to report to the supervised authority in Europe, and also there's condition if feasible, there's have a 72-hour window, means that they put two conditions together. So no matter how big is your company, no matter how large is instance, you have to report to the authority within 72-hour windows. But Korea, however, my educated guess is that when the Korean National Assembly drafted the bill on the Korean Personal Information Protection Act, they think about your model, and they were thinking about two conditions, right? 72-hour window and without delay, and they separated. So they put undue delay, without delay, not undue delay, that's European, but they put due delay, without delay in the act, and they put the other part, 72 hours on the enforcement decree of the act. So what happened was that the Korean law doesn't have it's not strong enough to protect like the EU style. And plus on the second section, on the enforcement decree, what happened was that they put the 72 hours there in terms of major cases. If for instance, include more than 10 million users. Something, there's a specific limit. So you apply with only big instance. So I think that after this instance, maybe you have to rethink about our regulatory framework. Do you really care about the details implementation? So I think it's time to focus on how to improve the details, how you provide more effective enforcement of the law.
Thank you for explaining for that, attorney. Now, when we turn to SK Telecom and KT, it was actually a kind of a different reason. We learned that it's about external hacking. What kind of basic protections do you think our companies are still missing, Professor?
Well, the security professionals, there are many security professionals in the businesses, but we need more. We need more budget to enforce the security policies the companies need to follow. Back to basics, I say. I mean, more people, more budget, proper training, and vigilant approach to follow steps to protect company assets. Korean law requires for security breaches notice to the government officers within 24 hours window. For personal information breach requires 72-hour notice. And the Korean law is one of the first law that requires informing individuals for public and private sector after data breaches. And following these also nowadays we are also talking about the stronger fines or punishment. But not only these stronger fines and punishment, we need to develop standards, better standards for instance containment, recovery, and transparent explanation on how these instances happen, what customers, individuals should do to contain the additional breaches or accidents after breach.
Right, definitely. So looking into the actual routes and also follow-up measures and raising the standards would be very important in these kinds of cases. Now, based on the scale of the incident, like our Professor Kim has touched upon, Coupang is now facing a possibility of the largest fine ever, up to 3% of its revenue, roughly 1.2 trillion won, that is. So in global terms, how meaningful is this figure, attorney?
So in terms of question, because if you compare with the EU, it's GDPR, there are two levels of the standard level. The first higher level is 4%. No, it's like 20 million euro, and or about up to 4% of the total worldwide annual turnover of the previous year. So you have that case that we compare with higher level is 4%, lower than higher. But there's the other class, the level in EU GDPR, and you have 2%. It means that have a 10 million euro or 2% of that total worldwide annual turnover of the previous year of the company. So we can just compare on the number. It's like 20 million 4%, 10 million 2%. And Korea is 3%, is in the middle. But it's very interesting because that I do not think that stronger, fine will make change. It's not because it's not caused by a single factor. It's very combination. A lot of things happens. But however, when you enforce something policy, you have to make it something very effective. But the way I see it here, if it's the Coupang case, right? It's different from SK Telecom. SK Telecom they're providing domestic service only, right? But in Coupang, they're providing service in Taiwan, right? They were a global player already. And so what happened was that if you compare with the EU standard, right? They're using global turnover, the global revenue. But Korean law is just say turnover revenue. So because not many companies actually providing global service right now, right? So my concern is that actually I'm sure they will litigate it about whatever fine they got it, they will sue the government and there will be the litigation. And happened was that think about what happened that what is the actual the annual revenue of Coupang? Is it Coupang Korea only or Coupang Taiwan or Coupang US, which is incorporated in the New York Stock Exchange, right? That's the legal issue because you have to follow the money and how the transaction happened. However, one thing really surprised me on the Korean law, right after this following paragraph has exception to how to calculate the revenue. They will specifically exclude unrelated revenue. That means that anything leaking and anything incident happened, right? Any that is unrelated to the violation. So if the Coupang say this certain revenue, part of revenue is not related to our certain service, they can exclude. The government have to exclude. I mean, it's not them. It's the government have to exclude because there's a specific provision. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really concerning because and the government, the company they're looking at the law is like, wow, well, we have going out. There's a loophole here, so we can complain that we have to limit our damage up to the Korean operation. Also, we can have within the Korea, we can say this is only the certification sector. It's a non-certificate sector. It's not effective. So they can really minimize. So personally, I'm very concerned that actual damage amount will be much less than what the people expected.
Mm-hmm. That's very concerning. Yeah. So even though that could not really just prevent these kinds of cases, it could really help, raising these penalty levels. So in fact, public sentiment is also shifting towards raising these tougher penalties. And President Lee has in fact also ordered the government to move towards implementing this punitive damages system. Mm-hmm. Attorney, for our viewers, could you tell us what exactly is this punitive damages? And how do you see it being implemented in real life?
Yeah, well, so from legal perspective, there are two damages, right? There's a legal, civil damage or the criminal damage, more like a penalty, right? Civil damage means the money. You made something screw up, you pay money. Like Coupang, there was a data breach and a lot of the damage here. They have to pay for the individual, the victim, whoever victim. But here, it's a punitive damage is kind of a hybrid. Like say, it's a civil case, but the court, in some cases, allow that higher. It's not really proportional. It's not really reasonable under legal sense. But they give them, in some certain case, very limited case, they allow to go for lump sum amount. And they can mix their cases. It's a U.S. system. They mix all the class, right? And so when a court approves the class action, means that it's very interesting because they all get together and they can sue them. So it's not individual remedy they get it. So Korea, you can sue Coupang. There's maybe 10,000 people get together and they sue them. But the final remedy is individual. Each person maybe get, I don't know, 50,000 won, something very small, but it's not individual. So when it happened was that it's kind of a settlement issue. But in the class action means that everybody get together, maybe to me it's only 50 or 100,000 won, but we put together could be 1 trillion won. So it's a big impact. Also, there's one, we already have a kind of, in a way, to punitive damage in law, in system. You can have up to 5 times. Once again, there's a problem. From legal perspective, if someone gave me this regulation, what do you think? They say there's no way. Because if you want to prove them, the Coupang made a mistake, or in terms of data protection, you have to prove court that there is the willful misconduct and gross negligence. When you say legally, gross negligence is almost criminal level. So it means that you have to 80 or 90% higher to prove their damage, their degree of the misconduct, which is almost impossible. So interesting enough, and it's not surprised to notice the fact that there is no single case in Korea, court case, they allow the punitive damage provision in Korea, although they have been implemented for a long time, because the court cannot apply because it's too high standard. It's gross negligence or willful misconduct. Willful misconduct or the intentional misconduct means that someone intends to hit someone. It's almost criminal. Means that it's almost criminal, but not as much as high criminal. It's a very high standard, so no way you can get it. So I guess that's needed to get changed, corrected, because that's too high. People want to put that kind of damage, something effective damage remedy, right?
Right. So the question will be whether this punitive damages can actually be implemented in real life. Now, financial regulators, in fact, warn of that the latest cases of leakage could lead to voice phishing and smishing risks from the data that they've received. Professor, what should consumers, us, be most alerted to right now?
Well, as financial regulators said, we need to be aware of the scammers can use voice phishing, smishing, and financial scams to take advantage of victims of this instance. Well, not only the data being exposed to the scammers, but to the dark side of the internet, the ordinary scammers often call the victim and say, oh, to get the additional benefit from this instance or to provide additional protection, you need to sign up on this, you need to register and through this, you need to provide your credit card number and so on. These are the new types of incidents nowadays happening. Not only we worry about the data that has been exposed, but also we need to aware of there are scammers who don't have our data, but just use the fact that there is an incident. So the scammers love this type of tactics and this type of timing. So we need to be aware of that. And we need to be vigilant on what the financial regulator says and what the company says. On top of that, some people worry too much about what's going to happen and so on. So they are fearsome and they stop doing certain things they need to do online. But if consumers are aware of what's happening and the damage that can be, the incidents that can damage individuals can maybe limited, and they should be, and if they pay more attention on what's happening and on the online, then they can be they can build a little bit more trust, and they can actively participate in the digital world as it has happened.
So we really should be more alert and also keep extra precaution on the calls and messages that we're receiving.
But too much worry may also hurt.
Right, balancing it would be very important. Thank you so much for your insights, Professor Kim, tonight.
Thank you.
And of course, Attorney An, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
That'll be all from us on Within the Frame tonight. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and engaged.
A country where traditional and modern cultures coexist.
Where you can explore spectacular landscapes and nature.
Savor the delights of traveling at every turn.
Where? Korea, of course.
There are some must-visit places in Korea. Ones that appear in every tour guidebook: Hangang River, Gyeongbokgung Palace from the Joseon Dynasty, and...
Yes, these are essentials, but I want to go somewhere a little different. I don't have to follow the guidebook. For example, filming locations for K-pop music videos or K-dramas and movies.
Traveling is all about taking it slow. A long walk at your own pace, or even zoning out somewhere quiet. Doesn't it sound relaxing?
You travel for the experience, trying something new in a foreign place, de-stressing and making lifetime memories, taking tons of pictures along the way.
70% of the Korean territory is mountainous. Naturally, hiking is a very popular pastime in Korea. Not your kind of activity? Trust me, the view will make the effort worth it. Just catch your breath by the cold stream in the valley.
Korea is surrounded by the sea on three sides. From the beach, you can enjoy a wide open view as well as various water activities. But the riverside is great too. There's plenty to see and do.
If you're in Korea, you can't miss the night view full of dazzling lights.
Yes, even the same place can have a totally different vibe at night.
Want to make unforgettable memories?
How about traveling to all corners of Korea? Join us next time to explore more about Korean culture.
held its first debate over the weekend.
The economy is expected to expand 2.5% this year.
Korea's ties with its global partners on the sidelines of the status UN summit.
A massive drone attack on Ukraine overnight on Monday and Tuesday.
Arirang.
Where's my PDF report?
Convert, merge, edit. When am I supposed to finish all this?
Wait! Editoron does all that? I can fix text right in the PDF, black out personal info with one click, convert, merge, and save to the cloud so I can download it on my PC or tablet. Easy.